In the 9th century of your calendar, the largest library in Western Europe held perhaps a few hundred books, and its monks, whom you have met on this journey, copied and guarded everyone like the treasures they were. In the same century, in a round city between two rivers, there stood a metropolis whose booksellers' market alone held more than 100 shops, whose scholars complained about the impossibility of keeping up with the new titles, and whose ruler, the stories say, paid the translators of the world's great books with their weight in gold. It was called plainly and magnificently the House of Wisdom, and around it spread the largest and most learned city on earth. And tonight, as the heat of the day finally lifts off the rooftops of Baghdad, you are inside it, with ink on your fingers, and nowhere to be until morning. So settle into your bed. Let your shoulders sink. Let your hands rest wherever they are comfortable. There is nothing to remember tonight, and nothing to solve. If you drift off before the evening is done, that is exactly what this story is for. You are sitting in a courtyard of the House of Wisdom in Baghdad in the golden hour, and you are a copyist, young in the work, and your day's pages are done. The courtyard around you is cool and rectangular, arcaded on all four sides, with a fountain at its center run from the river channels, dropping its thin, bright rope of water into a marble basin, and the sound of it has been underneath your penmanship all day, the way the fountain of another empire once ran beneath another street you slept on. The fixed sound, the reference, the audible proof of order. The light is going amber on the upper arcades. Doves are settling along the roofline with their small liquid conversations. From the halls around the courtyard comes the quiet industry of the place at day's end. The rustle of pages, the click of pen cases being closed, a low dispute about a Greek verb dissolving into laughter, and the smell of the whole institution, which you would know now blindfolded anywhere on earth. Paper, ink, dust, rosewater, and warm stone. You flex your right hand, which has earned it. 20 pages today, fair copies of a treatise on geometry. Your reed pen recut 3 times, your lines straight, your margins honest, and the supervisor of copyists, passing behind you in the afternoon, paused 4 seconds longer than he pauses for nothing, which is, among the copyists, a decoration. And the evening ahead of you is the reason you took this work at all. Because the house does not close at dusk the way the workshops of the city close. The house changes shifts. The translators and the copyists go home to their suppers, and the astronomers arrive, and the roof of the world's greatest library becomes, every clear night, an observatory, and a young copyist who makes himself useful, fetching, holding lamps, minding the water clock, is tolerated up there among the brass instruments and the greatest minds alive, in the best seats in the world for the oldest show there is. Tonight is clear. You are staying. But first, while the light lasts, come up to the roof parapet early and look at the city, because Baghdad at evening from a high place is one of the sights of this or any century, and it is barely 70 years old. That is the astonishing thing to hold first. This city, the largest on earth, home to perhaps 500,000 souls and by some counts more, did not grow. It was decided. 2 generations ago, there was nothing here but villages and the meeting of roads. And then the caliph's surveyors came and chose this exact ground between the Tigris and the Euphrates, where the 2 rivers draw closest together, the crossroads of the world's canals and caravans, and they drew on the earth, in lines of ash, a perfect circle 2 miles across. And the story goes that they traced the plan in cotton, soaked in naphtha, and lit it at night so the caliph could walk the burning diagram of his capital before a single brick was laid. 100,000 workers raised it in 4 years. The round city, with its double walls and its 4 great gates facing the 4 quarters of the earth, roads running out from them like spokes to Persia, to Arabia, to Syria, to the river road of the south. And the city that then erupted around that circle, suburb on suburb, market on market, bridge of boats on bridge of boats, is the roaring, learned, polyglot capital spread below you now, going gold in the evening light. Look at it. The Tigris curves through the middle of everything, wide and brown and busy, crowded with rivercraft, the round wicker boats spinning down with their loads, the great rafts from the north, the pleasure barges with their lamps just kindling. The bridges of boats swing gently on their chains, packed with the homeward crowds. Domes and minarets stand up out of a sea of flat rooftops that runs to the horizon. And on the rooftops, everywhere, the city's evening life is beginning. Families spreading carpets and cushions for the cool hours, exactly as another river city spread its bedding under the coming stars 2,000 years before this one. Because the wisdom of hot rivers does not change, the day belongs to the shade, and the night belongs to the roof. And threading up from all of it, on the cooling air, the sound of the largest city in the world settling toward evening, 1,000 markets closing, 10,000 doves, the water everywhere, and under it all a low continuous hum that is simply 500,000 lives being lived at once. The sound Rome made, the sound your century cities make, the oldest urban music there is, and floating over it, from minaret after minaret, near and far, overlapping, the long unhurried lines of the call to the sunset prayer, human voices only, no bell, no bronze, the city marking its hour with its own breath. Now, walk the house itself, once in the last daylight, hall by hall, because this building, or rather this institution wearing several buildings, is the reason the next 1,000 years of human knowledge happened the way they did. The heart of it is the library, and a library here is not the locked cupboard of the abbey you slept in. 1 book per monk per year. It is halls of shelves, thousands of volumes, tens of thousands by some counts, catalogued, lent, argued over, and growing weekly. And around the library are the working rooms that feed it. The translation halls, where the masters sit with their assistants amid reference stacks 3 languages deep. The copying rooms, yours, long, north-lit, quiet as the scriptorium of the monks and 50 times its size. The binderies, smelling of leather and paste. The instrument workshops where the brass is turned. And through all of it, at all hours, the traffic of a working mind the size of a palace, pages carried, titles disputed, a geometer hunting a diagram, a poet hunting a rhyme, a physician hunting both. And understand what the shelves around you actually hold, because it is nothing less than the salvage of the ancient world, gathered here by deliberate policy. For 2 generations now, the caliphs have sent agents out across the earth with instructions and gold to the emperor of the Greeks, to the monasteries of Syria, to the cities of Persia and the ports of India, buying, borrowing, and copying manuscripts, the geometry of the Greeks, the medicine of the Greek physicians, the star tables of Persia, the arithmetic of India, whole sciences created home by caravan and riverboat, and the story every copyist tells every new copyist, true in spirit whatever its arithmetic, is that the caliph, receiving a treaty from the defeated emperor of the Greeks, asked as his tribute not gold, but books, and had them. And it is a fact of plain record that the treasures of this house were bought, not burned out of anyone, a library assembled by appetite rather than conquest, which is rare enough in any century to be worth saying twice. The old monks you slept among carried the embers of the ancient world through their dark centuries, desk to desk, in the north. Here, at the very same hour of history, is the other rescue, the southern one. Larger, richer, faster. The embers not merely carried, but blown into open flame. Translated, corrected, argued with, improved. And it is because both rescues happened, the parchment one and the paper one, that the ancient learning reaches your century at all. And tonight you are standing inside the bigger of the two bonfires, watching the lamplighters come round. And the fuel of this bonfire, the material fact underneath the whole Golden Age, is stacked in reams in the storeroom beside your copying hall. And it is the quiet hero of the entire story, paper. The monks of your other sleeping places wrote on parchment, the skins of flocks, a great Bible costing a herd, a library representing generations of sheep, and the ancients before them wrote on papyrus, the pressed reed of one river delta, fine but brittle and expensive at any distance from Egypt. And then, 2 generations ago, at the empire's far eastern edge, after a battle at a river called Talas, there came into the caliphate, the paper merchants will tell you, certain prisoners from the east who knew a secret their homeland had kept for centuries, the making of paper, and whatever the exact truth of the tale. The craft arrived, and the first paper mills of the empire went up, and then the mills of Baghdad itself. And everything changed, because paper is made not from flocks, and not from one river's reeds, but from rags, from linen and hemp, from the waste of every city's clothing, pulped and screened and dried, and it is strong and smooth and takes ink beautifully. And above all, it is cheap, 10 times cheaper than parchment, and getting cheaper, which means that for the first time in the history of writing, the page costs less than the words. Everything you saw from the parapet follows from that. The 100 bookshops of the paper market, where the professional scribes sit copying to order, and a laborer can price a book without laughing. The private libraries in merchants' houses, the letters flying along the post roads, the government running on files and registers, the poets publishing, the scholars complaining of too many titles, the whole roaring literate city. All of it stands on rag pulp, and the House of Wisdom most of all, for a translation movement, is, at bottom, a copying movement. And copying at this scale was simply impossible at parchment prices. The monks rationed knowledge because their pages were flocks. Baghdad spends knowledge like water because its pages are laundry. And centuries from tonight, when the craft finally crosses into Europe and meets a German goldsmith's press, the explosion your century calls printing will really be paper's second act, the first act having opened here, in mills along the Tigris, in the smell of wet pulp drying, within a long bow shot of the stool you copied 20 pages on today. And now, before the evening meal, the passage this journey owes every golden age, because Baghdad's brilliance, like Rome's peace, and Athens's leisure, and the plantation's wealth, has its ledger, and the ledger is written in the same ink as everything else. The city below you runs, in great part, on unfree labor. Enslaved people serve in its houses and its palaces, work its docks and its date gardens, and in the marshlands of the south, at this very hour of history, enslaved workers in their tens of thousands labor in conditions harsh enough that the chronicles of the coming decades will have terrible things to record about what follows. The law and the faith of this place enjoin kindness, regulate the institution, honor manumission, and the enslaved of the city include the educated and the eventually powerful, as well as the broken and the anonymous. And none of that, as you have learned in every century of this journey, is a justification, only a texture. The House of Wisdom's lamps are trimmed by somebody. The rag pickers who feed the paper mills, the porters who carry the book crates up from the river, stand in the same evening light as the geometers, and history will remember the geometers, and this story whose whole business is honest sleep, insists on seeing everyone in the courtyard before the light goes. And the Golden Age has a second, quieter cost, one the scholars themselves murmur about at the evening meal: patronage. The gold that buys the Greek manuscripts and pays the translators comes from the palace, and the palace has opinions. And in these very years, the caliph's opinions on doctrine are being enforced on scholars with an insistence that has put brave and learned men in real difficulty. And every mind in this building knows it and works on, as minds under patronage have always worked on, gratefully and carefully at once. The lamp that lights the page also casts the shadow of the hand that holds it. It was true in the Abbey. It is true here. It will be true in every laboratory of your own century, and the work, which is the point, survives its patron's weather mostly and gets copied anyway. Which is what you are for. Hold it all, the way the evening holds the city, everything in the same amber light, and come down now to supper, because the cooks of Baghdad are waiting, and they are, by broad agreement of every traveler who reaches this city, the best on earth. Supper is laid in the arcade off the courtyard for the house's evening people, the astronomers arriving, the librarians on late duty, one young copyist with ambitions, and the table is a short course in why Baghdad believes correctly that it has perfected eating. This is the first great age of the cookbook, and the city's kitchens cook from written recipes with named authors, dishes debated like poems, and tonight's table carries the tradition honorably. Flatbreads still blistered from the oven wall, a stew of lamb gone tender in a sauce that startles you with its first taste and then explains itself, meat cooked with fruit, apricots melted into the broth, a little vinegar, a little honey, the sweet and the savory married in one dish, which is the signature move of this whole cuisine, and will travel from these kitchens westward into Persia's neighbors and Spain, and eventually, worn smooth, into your century's tagines and festive tables. Rice, still a fashionable Easterner here, cooked in fat with saffron until every grain stands apart. A dish of eggplant, the vegetable this city is currently mad for, fried with garlic and bright with pomegranate. Fresh herbs by the handful, used like salad. And sweetness everywhere at the meal's edges, because this is the empire of sugar, cane from the southern marshes crushed and refined in the city's own works, a luxury spreading downward through the markets year by year, dusted tonight over almond pastries, scented with rosewater. And to drink, the pride of the table on a warm evening, sherbet, fruit syrups, violet, pomegranate, lemon, poured over water cooled in porous jars, sweet sharp and cold and vivid. And here your tongue is sitting at another small headwater of your own vocabulary, for the Arabic for a drink is sharab, and from its family your century inherits, by the usual patient caravan of centuries, both the sherbet of the ice cream shops and the syrup on every pharmacy shelf and pancake table in your world. You are drinking the ancestor of the word syrup, chilled under an arcade, while the first stars come out over the paper market, and somewhere down the table a geometer is arguing, with total seriousness and a pastry in his hand, that the apricot stew is itself a proof of the compatibility of opposites, and the table rules the argument sound. As the plates are cleared, the man who sat quietly at the table's end rises to go up to the roof, and the librarian beside you touches your sleeve and murmurs a name, and the name is the reason half the mathematics of your century has the vocabulary it has. It is Al-Khwarizmi. He is the head of the house's mathematicians, a Persian from the eastern lands his name remembers, unassuming at supper, formidable on paper, and the book he has written, the one your copying hall has been reproducing all season, is a manual with a workmanlike title, the Compendium on Calculation, by completion and balancing. A book that sets out in plain worked examples about inheritances and land and trade, a general method, a way of taking any problem with an unknown quantity in it, naming the unknown, and then restoring and balancing the two sides of the statement, step by patient step, until the unknown stands alone and known. The Arabic for that restoring, that setting of a broken thing back whole, is al-jabr, and it stands in his title. And when the book crosses into Latin Europe centuries from tonight, the translators, having no word for the method, will simply keep the Arabic, and al-jabr will shed its article and its accent on the long road, and arrive in your century's classrooms as algebra, still meaning exactly what it meant at this supper table, the restoration, the making whole of an incomplete statement, which is, when you think of it drowsily enough, a rather beautiful thing for mathematics to be named after. And the man himself is riding along inside the language too. The Latin copyists, working from his calculation book, will head their translations with his name, and al-Khwarizmi, ground smooth by centuries of European mouths and margins, becomes a common noun, algorithmus, the art of reckoning by the new numbers, and then, in your own century's machines, algorithm, the word for any exact procedure, any recipe of steps that cannot fail if followed, so that every algorithm running anywhere in your world tonight, sorting your letters, steering your voyages, choosing your music, carries, folded invisibly inside it, the name of the quiet Persian gentleman who has just excused himself from the apricot stew and is climbing, at this moment, the stairs to the roof to look at the stars. And the new numbers his book teaches are the evening's other gift, and they deserve 5 minutes of your drowsiest wonder, because you grew up inside them the way a fish grows up inside water, and tonight you can see them from outside. They came from India, 9 little signs, and with them a 10th thing that is not quite a sign, and together they replaced a way of counting that had crippled arithmetic since counting began. Consider, the librarian says, refilling your sherbet. How the Greeks and the Romans wrote numbers, letters standing for amounts, piled and repeated. A system in which the symbols say what they are but not where they stand, in which large numbers sprawl like processions, and multiplication is a professional skill, and long division very nearly a heroic one. And now consider the Indian way, which this house has adopted, championed, and is teaching the world. 9 digits, and the revolution is not the digits, it is the places. Each position is worth 10 of the position to its right, so the same little sign means 3, or 30, or $3,000, according to where it stands, the value living not in the ink, but in the position. And suddenly numbers of any size march in tidy columns, and arithmetic collapses from an art into a procedure, a thing that can be taught to children and done at speed by anyone, which is precisely what the markets of this city, doing sums from Spain to Sind, required. But positions create a problem the Greeks never faced. What do you write when a position is empty, when there are 3 hundreds and no 10s and 5 ones? You cannot write nothing, or 305 collapses into 35, and the caravans accounts with it. And so, from India with the digits, came the 10th thing, the mark for emptiness, a small round sign, meaning nothing is here on purpose, and the Arabic name for the empty one is Saifar, the void, and Saifar is about to have the strangest career of any word in this whole journey. Traveling into Latin, it becomes Zephyrum, and wears down in Italian counting houses to 0, your 0, the name of nothing itself. And traveling by another road into French and English, Saifar becomes cipher, at first meaning the 0, then the whole mysterious new arithmetic, then any secret writing, any code, so that your century's ciphers and decipherings, all its coded messages, descend from the little round mark for an empty column and one Arabic word for nothing became, in your mouth, both the nothing and the mystery. The librarian sits back, entirely satisfied, as well he might be. His house did not invent the void, but it wrote the void down, taught it to travel, and gave your entire civilization the digit it uses most and thinks about least, the quiet circle, the placeholder, the polite written silence, holding columns open, all over the world, forever. And now, up the stairs behind the mathematician, onto the roof of the House of Wisdom, into the enormous violet evening, because the night shift of the world's knowledge is setting up its instruments, and you are carrying the lamps. The roof is broad and parapeted, and the astronomer's corner of it is a small forest of brass and shadow. The great graduated rings and quadrants on their stands, the sighting rules, the star globes, and the low table with its ledgers where tonight's numbers will go, and the men moving among the instruments with the day's last light on their faces are the observatory's staff, because this is exactly what it is. One of the world's first true observatories, founded by the Caliph himself, staffed, salaried, and given the noblest research program a government has ever funded. Check everything. That is the actual mandate. The star tables of the Greeks, the geometry of the heavens received from the ancients with the books your halls translate, are not to be memorized here. They are to be tested night after night, star by star, against the sky itself. And where the old numbers disagree with the heavens, and they do, the centuries have shifted things. The heavens win, and the tables are corrected, and the corrected tables are published, and the whole method, observe, compare, correct, publish, is so plainly the ancestor of your century's laboratories that the historians of science looking back will simply say so. The senior observer greets the mathematician, nods you toward the lamp shelf, and takes up the evening's first instrument. And it is the one to hold your drowsy attention, because it is the most elegant object of this entire age, the astrolabe. It is a disc of brass that fits in two hands, layered like a shallow box of secrets, a solid plate engraved with the lines of the local sky, and turning over it an open fretted web, pierced and pointed, each point the position of a bright named star, and the whole instrument is nothing less than the sky itself, flattened by exact geometry onto metal, a working model of the heavens you can hold, and by sighting one star along its back and turning the web to match, its owner can read from its face the time of night, the hour of sunrise, the direction of prayer, the height of anything, the position of everything. A universe of answers folded into a disc, the weight of a small book. Your century will one day carry devices in its pockets that answer every question by consulting an invisible sky of signals. The astronomers on this roof would examine such a device with interest, note that it requires the signals, and point out, gently, that theirs works forever, anywhere, by consulting the actual sky, and needs only a clear night and an educated hand, and then they would go back to work, because the twilight is ending, and the first stars are standing up out of the east, and the checking of the universe is about to resume. Earlier, before the light went, you witnessed the house's characteristic scene, the one that would justify the whole institution if nothing else here existed, and it is worth replaying as the night settles, because it was 20 minutes of the actual work of civilization, a translation dispute. In the arcade, around a table bearing one Greek manuscript, one earlier Syriac translation of it, and 3 cups of sherbet going warm, the master translator, his Greek assistant, and a physician who had walked over from the Bimaristan on exactly this errand, disagreeing with passion and manners about one word, a term in the old medical text, naming a condition that Greek uses in 2 senses, and Arabic must choose between. And the choice matters. The physician kept insisting, tapping the page, because students will treat patients out of this sentence for the next 500 years, in which he was, if anything, underestimating. The master heard everyone. The old Syriac was consulted and found to have dodged the problem. A runner was sent to the library for a second Greek copy, which arrived and differed by one letter, which changed everything. And the difference was tracked, weighed, and finally resolved the way such things are resolved here, by the master writing both readings into the margin with his reasons. Because where certainty is not honestly available, this house has decided, once and institutionally, that honesty is, and a margin that admits its doubts is worth more to those 500 years of students than a clean page that lies. It is the same discipline the roof applies to the stars, applied to sentences. Check everything, show the working, correct the tables, admit the margin. You watched it done over one word for 20 minutes, and the word was worth it. And somewhere in your century, a physician reading a critical edition, a scholar weighing 2 manuscript variants, an editor footnoting an uncertainty, is keeping the exact faith that was kept at that table this afternoon, between the fountain and the sherbet, in the amber light. The senior observer's first measurement of the night is the simplest and the deepest, and it hands you 2 more of your century's words while he makes it. He plumbs the vertical. A fine line, a weight, held still, the ancient gesture of every builder in every century of this journey, and sighting up along it, he fixes the one point of the sky that stands at this instant exactly overhead, the crown of the whole dome, directly above the house, above your upturned face, above the plumb line's silent testimony, and the Arabic term of art for the overhead direction, the way of the head, is samt aras. And when the Latin translators meet the phrase in the star books, your halls are sending west, they will grind its first word through their alphabets and their abbreviations until it comes out centuries later, polished and unrecognizable as zenith. The top of the sky, the high point of anything, of a career, of a fever, of a civilization, and your century reaches for the word whenever anything peaks, never suspecting it is speaking roof of Baghdad Arabic, the way of the head straight up. And its opposite came west in the same baggage. The point beneath the world, the sky's floor, the spot directly under the observer's feet on the far side of the earth. The Arabic calls the opposite, the counterpart, and Nazir, and Latin wore it down to nadir, the bottom of everything, so that when your century says its fortunes have reached their nadir, it is standing, whether it knows it or not, on this roof, between the 2 Arabic words for straight up and straight down, the entire vertical axis of your language's universe surveyed and named in one evening's work by men with plumb lines and brass who would be pleased, but not surprised, to learn that their words for up and down outlived their empire, their instruments, and very nearly everything else, because up and down, of all the things a civilization names, are the 2 that never stop being needed. And while the instruments are being aligned, the senior observer tells you, because you asked the right question while holding his lamp, about the expedition, the one the whole roof still talks about, the season the caliph decided to measure the earth. Not estimate, measure. The old Greek books gave a figure for the circumference of the world, and the mandate of this roof being check everything, the caliph sent 2 parties of surveyors out onto the dead flat desert plain north of here, where the horizon is as honest as a ruler, and their method was geometry itself, walking. One party marched due north, one due south, each measuring its distance on the ground with rods and cords, mile after patient mile, each party citing the height of the pole star as it went, until each had seen the sky tilt by exactly 1 degree. And then they turned around, measured everything again on the way back, compared, averaged, and multiplied by 360. Because if you know how much ground it takes to tilt the heavens 1 degree, you know the size of the earth, which is 360 of those degrees around. And the number they brought home to this house was, by your century's satellite-checked reckoning, astonishingly close to correct, within a few parts in 100 of the true figure, obtained with rope, brass, and the willingness to walk a desert twice. Hold the whole picture a moment, because it deserves it. A government, 1,000 years and more before your own century, funding pure research with no treasure at the end of it, but a number. Surveyors in the heat, counting rod lengths across an emptiness, checking the old books against the planet itself, and the planet consenting to be measured, as it always does, by anyone patient enough. The size of the earth is not a secret, and never was. It is written in the tilt of one star over one desert, legible to anyone with a plumb line and honest arithmetic. And it was read here by this house, while most of the world was quite sure such questions belonged to the angels. The observer finishes the story the way he finishes his measurements, without flourish, and turns back to his quadrant, and you stand holding the lamp over the ledger where tonight's small corrections are going down in neat brown ink. One more evening's installment of the longest project there is. The checking of the universe, still open, still funded, still hiring lamp holders. Full dark now, and the sky over the roof has completed itself. The great desert clear vault from horizon to horizon, and the astronomers move through their observing list, calling the stars by name as they sight them. And here is the thing to carry down into sleep tonight. The largest and quietest of all this city's gifts to you personally. You already know these names. You have known them all your life. Listen to the roof at work. Aldebaran calls the observer at the quadrant and cites the red eye of the bull, and the name is Arabic, Ad-Dabaran, the follower, because it follows the little cluster of the Pleiades across the sky all night, forever, and your century's star charts print it unchanged. Altair and the great white star of the eagle answers, Anas at-Ta'ir, the flying eagle, folded down to its last two syllables. Vega, the falling one, from the same eagle family of names. Deneb, plain Arabic for the tail, because it burns in the swan's tail, and half a dozen other tails across the sky wear the same word. Rigel, the foot, standing at the foot of the great winter hunter, and in the hunter's shoulder, most famous of all, the star your century's children learn as a tongue twister and delight in, Betelgeuse, worn down through centuries of copying from an Arabic phrase naming the giant's hand, misread and respelled by generations of European scribes into its current shape, but Arabic under every layer, like most of its bright brothers and sisters. Because here is the plain accounting of the brightest stars your century can see from its cities, something close to half answer to Arabic names, and the reason is this roof and the rooms below it. The star tables corrected here, the catalogs compiled and improved by this house and its successors, became the standard references of the civilized world. And when Europe's astronomy reawakened centuries from tonight, it learned the sky from Arabic books, translated in Spain, printed in Italy, and it kept the names in them, garbling gently, changing nothing essential, so that every clear night of your entire century, over every city and every ocean, the old vocabulary of these rooftops rises in the east and wheels overhead, the follower, the eagle, the tail, the foot, the hand of the giant, Arabic burning silently over Kansas and Tokyo and Buenos Aires, and almost nobody looking up knows what language the sky is in, and the sky does not mind. And neither did the men who named it, who wanted the names correct, not credited, and got exactly what they wanted, forever. And below the roofline, out across the lamplit rooftops of the city, another kind of night work is beginning, softer than astronomy, and destined to travel even further, because this is Baghdad. And Baghdad, among everything else it is the city where the stories live. Down in the paper market, there circulates in cheap copies that the booksellers can barely keep on their shelves, a growing collection of tales with a frame around them that you should hear tonight of all nights, because the frame is about exactly what you are doing. A king, wronged and dangerous. A brilliant young woman, Scheherazade, who volunteers to marry him and who saves her life, night after night, by the oldest trick in the human repertoire. She tells him a story and stops it at the perfect place, at the edge of sleep, unfinished, so that the night can pass safely, and there must always be another night, and the stories nest inside each other, tale within tale, voyages and lamps and locked rooms and clever servants, 1001 nights of them, and the whole vast collection, gathering stories here from Persia and India and the city's own streets, growing in the telling for centuries to come, is at bottom one long love letter to the idea that carried you through every century of this journey. A story told gently in the dark is a safe way to cross a night. The storytellers of the evening markets are at it now. You can almost hear them from the roof. The circles of listeners under the awning lamps, the pause before the good part, and in the tales they are telling. This very city is already becoming its own legend. The caliph walking his streets in disguise by night with his vizier, listening at doors, righting small wrongs. The Baghdad of the stories being born in the Baghdad of fact, each one feeding the other, until centuries from tonight, children on every continent will know this skyline, these rooftops, these river lamps, without ever learning a date or a dynasty, because the stories will carry the city where the histories never reach. You are sleeping tonight inside the most storied city on earth, at the exact hour of history when it began telling itself, and the proper response, the one Scheherazade herself would prescribe, is to let the telling do its work and drift toward the unfinished place and trust the night. One lit doorway on the courtyard's far side stays busy after dark, breathing faint strange smells into the night air, mint and vinegar and something mineral, and the librarian, seeing you notice, walks you past it on the evening's last errand, because inside is the house's other laboratory, the wet one, and 2 more of your century's biggest words are being distilled in it right now. This is the workshop of the experimenters the city calls practitioners of alchemia, the art, part inherited Egyptian craft, part Greek theory, part pure patient kitchen work, and its ambitions in this century run from the transmutation of metals, which will never work, to the purification of substances, which works magnificently and is quietly founding a science. Look at the benches, stills of glass and copper, the alembics, their long beaks dripping slow concentrated essences into waiting flasks, water baths for gentle heat, filters, funnels, crystallizing dishes, acids in stoppered jars that did not exist as pure substances anywhere on earth until rooms like this one learned to make them. The men who work here weigh, record, repeat, and publish. And when their craft travels west, Europe will take the Arabic name of the art, alchemia, and wear it down to alchemy. And then, when the gold dreams are finally scraped off and the weighing and recording stand alone, shorten it once more, dropping the very article, all, like an outgrown shell, into chemistry, so that every chemist in every laboratory of your century practices, by name, the art of this doorway, and on the near bench, the night's second word. The finest powder these workers know, the one ground so impossibly fine, it seems less a substance than a shadow of one, is the eye paint you met on another river 2,000 years upstream of tonight, the black coal of Egypt, al-Kul in this city's mouth, and its name became the craft's term of art for any essence refined to its utmost. the pure spirit of a thing, the ghost extracted from the body. And when, centuries from tonight, Europe's distillers apply the borrowed word to the potent spirit their own stills coax out of wine, the essence of essences as they see it, the name settles there for good. Alcohol, from the eyelids of Egyptian farm wives, through the alembics of this lamplit room, to every label in every shop window of your century. One word, 4,000 years, still meaning, underneath everything, the pure hidden spirit of a thing, patiently extracted, and there may be no stranger journey in this whole journey of words, and the workshop that gave it its middle passage is dripping quietly behind you as you say goodnight to it, distilling rosewater of all gentle things for the pharmacy and for the pastry cooks. The librarian's errand, before he releases you to the roof for good, is a basket of the day's new copied medical pages, to be walked 3 streets to the institution Baghdad is prouder of than its palaces, and you carry them together through the lamplit evening to the doors of the Bimaristan, the hospital. Not an infirmary attached to something else, not a hospice for the dying, but a hospital in the full sense your century means, a dedicated public institution where the sick of the city are admitted, examined, treated, fed, and nursed until well, staffed by salaried physicians who make rounds, keep case notes, and train students at the bedside, with separate wards for separate conditions, its own pharmacy compounding to the physician's written orders, and the detail every visitor to this city writes home about. Its care given without charge, endowed in perpetuity by pious foundations, so that the porter at this door asks a sick man nothing at night except where it hurts. The great teaching hospitals of your century, with their rounds and their charts and their residents trailing the attending physician ward to ward, descend from institutions exactly like this one, through Damascus and Cairo, and eventually Europe. And the physicians inside tonight would recognize your century's hospitals instantly and would want to see the pharmacy first. You hand the basket through, fresh copies for the physician's library, the Greek medicine your halls translate, flowing 3 streets over into practice at the bedside, which is the whole city working as designed. And through the open court, you can see the evening ward round moving lamp by lamp down the arcade. The murmured questions, the wrist taken between practiced fingers, the note made, and hear the hospital's night settling around its patients. The fountains, because the founders believed moving water eases the sick, and were right. The low voices, the kitchen sending up broth, and somewhere inside, this being Baghdad, a hired musician playing softly in the wards. Because the physicians of this tradition prescribe music the way they prescribe barley water, gently in measured doses for the loosening of the mind's knots, and walking home empty-handed through the warm streets. You can hear the Aoud's slow line following you halfway back to the house, medicine leaking out the windows into the general night, wasted on no one. Back on the roof, the deep evening has settled in fully, and while the astronomers work their list, take the long look at the city by night, because Baghdad, after dark, is its own instrument, and it is playing. The rooftops have all bloomed. Across the whole visible city, family by family, the beds are out under the sky, the low murmur of rooftop suppers and rooftop gossip rising and settling, lamps being carried up stairways, children being convinced, the entire population of the largest city on earth migrating 1 floor closer to the stars for the night, exactly as the mud brick villages of the old river did before there was a Baghdad to do it. The oldest architecture of hot country sleep, the roof, the mat, the sky, repeated tonight 500,000 times around your parapet. The tigress wears its evening jewelry, the lamps of the pleasure barges drifting down on the current with threads of music coming off the water, the ferrymen's lanterns crossing and recrossing, the moored rafts of the north glowing with their cook fires. And along both banks, the great water wheels turn their slow dark circles, lifting the river into the garden channels all night with a creak and spill. You can just hear in the lulls the sound of irrigation, the sound this land has made continuously for 4,000 years, older than every empire that has built the river for it. And the markets never entirely sleep. Down in the lanes, the night trades keep their lamps, the bakers already banking ovens for the dawn batch, the cook shops selling late harissa to the watchman, the paper market's night porter on his stool among the locked shutters of 100 bookshops, guarding more words than Europe owns. The watch calls the hour somewhere, unhurried. A door closes on a courtyard of laughter. The muezzins mark the night prayer across the dark, in their overlapping, unhurried lines, the city's own voice again, and after it, the town audibly settles a full tone lower, the way a house settles when the last lamp but one goes out. 500,000 people breathing around you in the dark, on their roofs, under the Arabic stars. It is the biggest sleeping household of this entire journey, and from up here, with the fountain still running in the courtyard below, and the quadrant clicking softly through its list behind you, it sounds, for all its size, exactly like the others. Like a full buyer, like a warm tower, like an inn in the rain. Like everything, everywhere, safely down for the night. And stitching this whole sleeping empire together, out beyond the city's lamps, the state's own night workers are riding, and the roof, which sees everything, sometimes sees them come in. A single rider on the western road, moving fast and light under the stars toward the postal compound by the gate. The Baghdad. It is the caliphate's relay post, the nervous system of an empire that runs from the Atlantic nearly to India, and its architecture is the oldest good idea in long-distance haste. Stations set a fast ride apart down every great road, hundreds of them, each with fresh mounts standing saddled so that the dispatch never rests, though every rider and every horse does. The letter handed forward station to station, the miles divided among many so that the message loses none, and the empire's registers list the stations and the distances like a pulse chart of the realm. And the master of the baride in every province is, not coincidentally, also the caliph's eyes there, for a service that carries all the letters knows most of the news, and the roads report to Baghdad as faithfully as the stars report to this roof. You have watched this idea before in other dress, the government couriers at their tearing trot down the Great Eastern Sea Road, the mail pouches changing counties at 50 miles an hour in the nets. And you will watch it again in the high Andes if this journey takes you there. Because every large human world discovers it eventually. Distance is defeated by division. Haste is a relay, and no single runner ever needs to be heroic if the stations are close enough and the horse is always fresh. The rider passes below the house in the dark, unhurried at the end of his own short stage, the dispatch bag across his back full of the empire's evening thoughts, tax rolls and troop reports, and, the Baghdad being the Baghdad, at least one province governor's private complaint about another, and the gate receives him, and a fresh horse is already stamping in the yard, and somewhere 12 miles west, another rider is already carrying tomorrow's news through tonight, at the speed of relays, which is the speed of empires, which is worked out over the whole road, about the speed of a story being passed, hand to hand, down a very long table. Between errands to the lamp shelf, the old astronomer's assistant, who was a copyist 40 years before you were born, examines your ink-stained fingers with professional approval and gives you, unasked, the guild's whole wisdom, which you should keep, because the craft you are learning is the load-bearing craft of this entire civilization. Your pen, he reminds you, is a kalam, a reed, cut from the marshes of the south, cured and trimmed to its nib with a knife whose angle is a school in itself, and the cut of the nib is the calligrapher's signature before he writes a word, and a master mends his kalam the way the navigators of the far ocean mend their course, constantly, minutely, by feel. Your ink is soot and gum and gall, ground and aged, and the recipes are guarded like the pastry cooks. And your script, the thing itself, is in this city not merely handwriting, but the highest visual art of the civilization. For a faith wary of images pours its whole genius for beauty into the written word. And the great calligraphers of Baghdad are celebrities as your century counts them. Their alphabets studied like architecture, their pages collected like jewels, and even your workday book hand, the plain round professional script of the copying halls, is a designed thing, proportioned, taught by geometry, the height of the letters ruled by the width of the nib in strict ratios. Writing built the way the round city was built, on the compass and the measure. And what the craft is for, he says, straightening your grip one final degree, is exactly what tonight is for. A page correctly copied is a mind preserved. The geometer whose treatise you fair copied today has been dust for 1,000 years, and this evening he spoke Greek turned Arabic through your reed to a future neither of you will see. And some copyist not born, in some house not built, in some century you cannot imagine, will copy your copy, and the chain will hold hand to hand, nib to nib, exactly as it held through the scriptorium you slept beside in the north. The same chain, the same work. The embers passed along, and every book that reaches your own century alive comes down that chain, through fingers stained exactly the color yours are stained tonight. He pats your shoulder once, takes the lamp, and goes back to the ledger, an old man entirely certain that he has spent his life on the winning side of history, because he has. And one more household word is waiting for you in the house's storerooms, the last of tonight's collection, and the librarian hands it over with the keys as he shows you where the lamp oil lives. The storeroom of any establishment in this city, the strong dry room where goods are laid up, provisions, stock, treasure, is a makhzan, plural makazin, the place of storing, and the word works hard in this mercantile civilization. Every caravanserai has its makazin, every great house, every ministry. The arsenals of the state are makazin of weapons, the granaries makazin of wheat, and when the merchants of Italy, trading into these ports in the centuries ahead, borrow the word for their own warehouses, it sails west as magazzino, and thence into French and English as magazine, still meaning, for a long time, exactly this: a storehouse, and your century still keeps that first sense in its magazines of powder and shot, the storerooms of armies. And then, in a coffeehouse century far downstream, some London printer, casting about for a name for a new kind of publication, a periodical that would gather up miscellaneous good things in one place, reaches for the metaphor of the well-stocked storeroom and calls his production a magazine, a storehouse of stories, and the name takes and never lets go, so that every magazine on every shelf and screen of your century is, hiding in plain sight, an Arabic storeroom, its articles laid up in it like bales in the dry dark. And tonight you are standing in the word's original referent, holding the actual keys, while the librarian points out which shelf holds the good oil, which is the kind of joke history plays constantly, and hardly anyone is ever positioned to catch. And you carry the oil and the etymology back up to the roof together, both of them fuel. Late now, truly late, and your duties have narrowed to the pleasantest one, minding the clock, because the astronomer's measurements must be timed, and the timing lives in the corner of the roof in a softly dripping cabinet. And it is the water clock, and it is your friend for the rest of the night. It is a patient tower of vessels, water feeding from an upper reservoir through a regulated drip into a lower chamber, where a float rises with the filling, and the float rising moves a pointer up a graduated scale, the night ascending visibly, hour line by hour line, and the great clockmakers of this civilization, whose more famous machines gesture and chime and open little doors with automated figures for the delight of courts, would consider this roof's model austere, which is exactly what the astronomers require of it. No theater, just the level truth of water, which cannot hurry and cannot be bribed. Your job is to keep the reservoir topped, read the float when the observers call for time, and log the hour against each measurement in the ledger. And so the night passes through your hands twice. Once as stars overhead, once as water rising. The two oldest clocks in the world running side by side, checked against each other, agreeing, as they have agreed, since long before anyone thought to write either of them down. The city's own night is divided by softer instruments, the muezzin's calls, the watchman's rounds, and between the fixed calls the night here goes by, watches as it went in every century you have slept through, and the astronomers inhabit the deep ones the way the monks inhabited theirs, awake at the hours the world has abandoned on purpose, working quietly at the top of a sleeping city. And there is a particular fellowship on this roof in the dead middle of the night, the quadrant clicking, the water dripping, the pen scratching, the 500,000 sleepers below, that you have felt before in a candle-lit choir, in a lamplit signal box, at a steering sweep in mid-ocean, the small society of the deliberately awake, and you are in it tonight, junior member, keeper of the drip, and the float rises, and the stars wheel, and both clocks agree that the night is exactly where it should be, which is deep and passing, and in excellent hands. And deep in the smallest hours, on your cushion between the water clock and the parapet, you surface once, as roof sleepers do, and audit the night with your eyes closed, in the order this city has taught you. The fountain below, unhurried, the thin bright rope still falling. The water clock at your shoulder, its patient mineral drip. The float somewhere up in the high hours now. The quadrant, one soft click, a pause, the pen. The river sounds, thinned to the last barge, and the water wheels slow creak and spill. 500,000 sleepers, breathing on their roofs, a sound too large to hear and impossible not to feel. And over it all, the stars in their Arabic, wheeling on schedule, the follower following, the eagle flying, the whole checked and corrected sky proceeding exactly as the tables now say it should, everything answering, everything logged, and you sink again into the warm night air without ever having fully surfaced. The second sleep of the rooftops taking you the way the river takes a lamplit barge, smoothly, southward without asking. And as the night runs toward the far prayers, let the city's year wheel once past your cushion, because Baghdad keeps its calendar with everything else in ink and richly. The spring, when the two rivers rise with the far mountains of snows, and the water engineers of the city, heirs of 4,000 years of this exact problem, walk the dikes and rate the canals, and the gardens south of the walls detonate into blossom, and the picnic barges are repainted. The high summer, when the city moves fully onto its roofs and into its courtyards and its shaded markets, and the sherbet sellers are princes, and the ice comes down by special caravan from the northern mountains, packed in straw, sold by weight to the great houses, snow in August in the world's hottest great city, which is this civilization in one commodity, anything, anywhere, if the logistics can be written down. The autumn, the caravan season's great departures, the pilgrim caravan assembling in its thousands on the western plain with its own markets and physicians and water trains, the year's great shared adventure, and the date harvest coming up the river from the south, boat after boat of the empire's daily sweetness. And the mild, bright winter, the scholar's favorite, the season of lamps and wool and long uninterrupted work, the copying halls at their fullest, the observatory's clearest skies, and, once every few years, the morning the whole city climbs to its roofs at dawn, because snow, actual snow, is falling on Baghdad, an inch of white astonishment on the domes and the palm crowns, gone by noon, remembered for a decade, entered, you may be sure, in somebody's ledger, because everything here is entered in somebody's ledger. And through all 4 seasons, the constants, the rivers, the prayers, the ships, the ink. The house does not close for weather. The tables are corrected in every season. The chain of copies lengthens link by link, and the year turns through the round city like the great fretted web of the astrolabe turning over its engraved and patient plate. The moving sky over the fixed earth, reading each other forever. And before sleep takes you the rest of the way, walk the whole lamplit evening once more, hall by hall and word by word, touching each thing as you pass it and letting it go. The courtyard fountain's thin, bright rope, running under your penmanship all day, the fixed sound, the audible proof of order. Let it go. The round city drawn in burning lines on the night earth, the 4 gates facing the 4 quarters, and the largest city in the world, grown up around a decision. Let it go. The library assembled by appetite rather than conquest, bought, not burned, the southern rescue answering the northern one, the embers blown into open flame. Let it go. The paper made of laundry, the page grown cheaper than the words, and the 100 bookshops of the market standing on rag pulp and changing everything. Let them go. The ledger read honestly, the lamps trimmed by somebody, the porters in the same amber light as the geometers, and the patron's shadow on the patronized page. Let it go. The apricots melted into the lamb, the empire of sugar, and the cherub in your cup that will be sherbet in the ice cream shops and syrup on every shelf of your century. Let it go. The quiet Persian gentleman excusing himself from supper, Al-Jabr the Restoration shedding its accent into algebra, and his own name worn down by the Latin margins into every algorithm running anywhere tonight. Let him go. The 9 digits and the 10th thing, the small round sign for nothing on purpose, CFR becoming 0 in the counting houses, and cipher in the coded letters. The one word that became both the nothing and the mystery. Let it go. The dispute over one word, the second copy differing by 1 letter, and the margin that admits its doubts, worth more than the clean page that lies. Let it go. The roof of brass and shadow, the mandate to check everything, and the astrolabe, the sky flattened onto metal, a universe of answers in 2 hands. Let it go. The plumb line fixing the way of the head, zenith and nadir, surveyed in one evening. The entire vertical axis of your language named from this parapet. Let them go. The surveyors walking the desert twice, the heavens tilting 1 degree, and the size of the earth read off a rope by men who were nearly exactly right. Let them go. The stars answering to Arabic, the follower, the eagle, the tail, the foot, the hand of the giant. Half your sky speaking rooftop Baghdad over every city of your century, credited to no one, correct forever. Let them go. Scheherazade stopping at the perfect place. The tales nested like rooms in rooms, and the oldest truth of this whole journey, that a story told gently in the dark is a safe way to cross a night. Let her keep the king listening, and let it go. The alembics dripping their slow essences, alchemia wearing down to chemistry, and the eye paint of another river becoming the alcohol on every label. The pure hidden spirit of a thing, patiently extracted. Let them go. The hospital that asks a sick man nothing at night except where it hurts. The ward round moving lamp by lamp, and the aoud playing medicine out the windows, wasted on no one. Let it go. The column cut from the southern marshes, the book hand ruled by geometry, and the chain of copies holding hand to hand, nib to nib, through every century between this roof and yours. Let it go. The Makzan whose keys you held? The storeroom that sailed west into every magazine on every shelf, its articles laid up like bales in the dry dark. Let it go. The borrowed rider passing under the parapet with the empire's evening thoughts, distance defeated by division, haste made a relay, the horse always fresh. Let him ride and let it go. The 500,000 sleepers on their roofs, the barges trailing music down the Tigris, the water wheels creaking their 4,000-year-old song, and the muezzin's overlapping lines settling the city a full tone lower. Let them go. And the water clock at your shoulder, the night rising visibly in its glass. Hour line by hour line, the level truth of water, which cannot hurry and cannot be bribed. Let it rise and let it go. It is all still there and all still being checked. That is this city's own version of the promise. The quadrant is clicking through its list. The float is climbing toward the dawn lines. The tables are being corrected. The margins are being honest. The ink is drying on tonight's numbers, and the great chain of copies is holding, link by link, all the way from this roof to the room you are actually sleeping in, which contains, whether you can see them from your bed or not, more descendants of this house than you could count with both clocks. So your hands can let go of the day, your shoulders can let go of the day, and your thoughts can lay down their pens now, cap their inkwells, and stretch out on the warm roof of the house of wisdom, under the corrected stars, with the whole night ledgered, and the drip keeping count, and nothing left to copy until morning. One last thing, and this city of words should say it in its own way. Of all the night watches that have kept you through these centuries, tonight's is the only one keeping watch over the sky itself. And here is the beautiful, sleep-shaped truth of what they are doing up here. They are checking that the universe is where it said it would be. Star by star, hour by hour, quadrant and ledger, the astronomers are confirming, measurement by measurement, that the heavens keep their appointments, and the heavens, tonight as every night, are passing the audit, and there has never been a lullaby quite like that one. The sky is on time. It is written down. You can check the ledger in the morning. The fountain is running. The float is rising. The stars are answering to their old names. The follower following. The eagle flying. All of them exactly where the corrected tables say. And the men who checked are still awake beside you, unhurried, keeping the oldest and gentlest watch there is. The watch that has never once found anything wrong. Sleep now, under a sky that has been checked. Good night.